Hello again, everybody, and welcome to 50 by 50, whatever happened to the Harvard class of 1976. I'm Michael Conniff. I'll be your host, and I am super happy to be joined by Marian Craighill. Welcome, Marian. Great to have you.
Wonderful to be here. I really think these are great that you've been doing these. I've really been
Oh,
interested in where
yeah,
these
it's very
these
nice of you. It's been fascinating, and it's really been a great way to get ready for reunion. It's really been
yes.
fun. What? So, Marion, you and I would say, knew each other a little.
Yep.
Um, I don't know if you remember me, but I do remember you. Remember hearing your name a lot, and but I did not know that. Well, first of all, you're an MD. You've had a very distinguished medical career, and also as a medical activist in the field, and we'll get into all that. But did you know I did not know you had married Charlie Haynes?
That's
Um,
right. We
so
have yes, lovely family.
and we had some technical trouble yesterday when we tried the first time, and somebody came to help you, and I was like, "Is that Charlie? Is somebody exactly like Charlie? A version of Charlie?"
Right.
So,
Well, he's my
so,
youngest. Yep.
and I want to kind of spoil the punchline a little bit here by saying you were married to Charlie, and now you're married to a woman, and so I think that's super interesting. Do I have that right?
Actually, never married because my life partner had a glioblastoma. So if we got married, she would have lost her wonderful health
Mm,
insurance and got my run of the mill regular old health insurance.
I see.
But
So
passed
she's,
June of 2012,
but you
2022.
are
So
you
yeah,
are joined at the hip, I guess would be a
right.
way to put it. So
Exactly.
first of all, tell me. So I'm that's just interesting to me in general. But I wanted to start with Charlie. You and I'd love to hear more about what he's up to. But
Sure.
you and Charlie, when did you start dating? Was it at Harvard or was it after?
We met in uh, Shakespeare class. I
Oh, gee.
was taking it my senior year because I finished all my pre-med requirements. My applications were in. It didn't matter what grade I got. So after my freshman expos gave me a grade that I was absolutely horrified by. And so,
You're
uh,
not the first or the last.
exactly. And so I assiduously avoided anything that you had term papers until my final year.
Oh boy.
And Charlie was taking it because he was an English major as a requirement, and I was taking it for fun. And I had a wonderful time in it and did great for the first. I totally didn't expect that, but in any case, yeah,
Yeah.
Charlie and I started courting in Shakespeare class, and then uh, it was a very clear romance because the first night that he invited me up to Jordan J because he was cooking, and when you were cooking in Jordan J, you could have anybody you want. His sister was in town because she had a 9 month old that she just left her no good husband, and she was feeling her oats that evening and left the 9 month old with Charlie. I woke up in the morning next to this beautiful baby who had already been diapered and fed. And I said to myself, this is not the same as every other Harvard bedroom I have woken up in. This guy has got something that looks like pretty good for family man. And sure enough,
Yeah.
he has been a most fabulous father to my children.
So Marion, you spent the night?
Yeah, sure.
Wow. Good for you. Well, you were a senior. What the hell, right?
That was our first night together. We had had plenty of dating, but that was our first night together. Was when I woke up next to Eric, who then later became our first child because we
Oh,
adopted him.
oh, that's great. You're like, wait a minute, I missed 5 years here. We already have a baby.
Yep,
how,
yep.
how did
He
this
was 6
happen?
on our wedding day. He was
And
6 years old exactly on our wedding day.
you ended up adopting him. That's amazing. Um,
Yeah.
and so it was senior year, and but you two were on very different paths, right? In terms of your careers. I know your career.
Yes.
I know you both took that seriously. So what did that mean?
So it basically meant that he had another year to do because he'd taken a year off to go homesteading in Alaska, had come back and was finishing up. So when I had decided that if I got into UCSF, that's where I wanted to go. I was always already into Harvard and Yale, and I was like, okay, if I get UCSF, I'm going. So it did mean
Well,
that the
I
first
said
year.
most people would have said, "I'm going to go to Harvard or Yale." Why was UCSF so appealing?
Well, it was interesting. My Gray's middle proctor was a fine arts major who had decided to go back to stay to take her pre-meds because she wanted to go to medical school. And she said that UCSF was her first choice because the other places, the big focus was on residency training. And UCSF was the one place where the focus was really on the medical school training. So that
Mm.
was why I had decided I wanted to go to UCSF. Completely irrelevant to that, I didn't realize until later, although I came in as an out of state student, which was hard to do. Once I was there for a year, California considered me an in state student. So
Oh,
my total financial outlay for all 4 years was the equivalent of what it would have been for 1 year had I, in fact, decided to go to either Harvard or Yale.
wow. Oh,
So, yeah,
that
but
that
it
that
meant that
that's
I
lucky.
basically went out there and we had a distance romance for a year. And then Charlie came out to do his education, postgraduate, his master's in San Francisco. And then
So
I waited for him in San Francisco for a year doing a postdoc in prenatal nutrition so that we could then come back together when he was ready to come back to do his graduate work in education and I was coming back for my residency in OBGYN.
boy, that's a lot of education. I'm impressed. Um, so
And I
so
wasn't even done yet because when I finished with OBGYN, my residency, I then started into a doctorate in public health. But at that point, we were now living on two postdoc salaries, which
right,
doesn't get you very far with a
yeah,
family.
not many
So,
doctors.
yeah. So I then basically said, okay, fine. I'll put my doctorate aside until Charlie's finished with his, and 11 years later, there was no way I was going to go back to it.
Now I know you became very active in medicine in lots of different ways as an activist. And I always remember, I don't know what Charlie ended up doing, but I do remember feeling like he was like that too. He was kind of an activist. He was going to be involved on a lot of different levels. But I'm just curious, did you feel that way when you got to Harvard Radcliffe, or did you feel that way after you got there, before or after?
For, for me, when I arrived, political activism wasn't on the horizon. It was just a chance to find all these great things to learn. Many people that you've talked to have come from very good schools. I came from a very lousy school, and it was an absolute intellectual wasteland. I
Where
dropped
was
out of
that,
high school
Mary?
at
Where was that?
St.
Where?
Lakewood High School in St. Petersburg, Florida.
Oh, okay.
And I dropped out of high school because I will never have a Florida diploma. In order to get a high school degree in Florida, you have to take Americanism versus Communism, which was taught by the football coaches. Get a salute the flag or you get an F for the day. And then and then they'd show these communist anti-communist flicks for their course classwork. So anyway,
That's
I wasn't
funny.
having.
I just spoke with another classmate, Mike Belmont, who people will maybe remember as a lacrosse player. He was an incredible lacrosse player. I remember him also. He was a card carrying Marxist in college. So that's the kind of thing you run into. He barely remembers it now, but it
Yeah,
vividly. I remember the conversation. So
right.
so you got to Harvard. It's so funny. Nobody has sort of mentioned that in that way. I got here and there was so much to learn, and the reason I'm guessing is that a lot of us just felt very overwhelmed by being there in a lot of ways. Very, there, I think many people, maybe this is particularly true of the men, but probably both men and women felt intimidated. There were so many talented people around, so many smart people. The one guy I went to the same high school with who came to Harvard was much smarter than me, John Kiernan. So it was like everywhere. Did you have? I don't sense you were intimidated by any of that.
I can tell you, I sat down with my freshman proctor and picked out the courses I wanted, which included taking intensive Japanese. I was born and raised in Japan. I wanted to get my Japanese back. And that was 2 hours of class a day, 20 characters a night. And be,
That's intense.
because I was taking it as I was taking 5 classes, that because I was taking intensive Japanese, it actually meant I was taking 6 courses, which was more than was allowed, but I got away with it because the proctor, because the whatever whoever's supposed to catch those things didn't, and so she passed off on it, and I had a wonderful time. I was just happy as pig in the mud, just doing all the stuff. Like I say, the freshman expos was the only thing that I felt was a disaster my
Okay,
freshman year.
I'm
Everything
telling
else,
you this 50 years too late. This came up in a previous conversation.
I
There
heard.
was, there, did you hear it? There is an expo. There was an XBOBS class for rejects that I joined after I got an F
Oh,
in my first paper. Remember, I grew up to be a writer. I got an F. And I said, this is not going to work out. Um, and so I switched, and it turned out to be a terrific class. The teacher was, I believe, George Richardson, who was a great teacher. Ned Lamont, who became governor of Connecticut, who's governor right now, he was in the class. And it was just a
good.
fun class. And then I even went on to teach expos a few years later when I was working at the Boston Herald newspaper. So there were ways out of it, Marion. You just had to know the right, had to know you could escape. But
No.
I want to hear about growing up in Japan. You were there, you said 9 years. And
I
where in
was
Japan were you and why were you there?
well. My I'm a fourth generation missionary. My dad grew up in China. My mom grew up in Turkey. They met at Swarthmore and went out to Japan,
Wow.
and that was right after the war. And then after, so
World,
we, my
World War
dad was
II.
basically a
World War
World
II.
War. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
so that was, my dad was basically on loan to the Japanese Episcopal Church. So he would fill in sabbaticals, which meant that we moved a lot. We lived in Okinawa, we lived in Hokkaido, but mainly in the Osaka, Kyoto area. So Kyoto is what I consider my hometown. And when every 3 years we would come to the United States for 3 months. So the US was this really weird place for me that
Hmm.
like everything was big and strange and weird. You see a bunch of relatives, and then you go back to Japan, where uh, it was very obvious that me and my siblings were different from everybody else, but it was what I knew. And then coming to the States was definitely culture shock.
Hmm.
um, I had no idea what to do with the Barbie doll. And I was coming into fourth grade girls, and I just couldn't get it. I just didn't get it. If a ball came at me, I ducked. I was
Uh-huh.
always picked last in gym because, again, those weren't the games that we played. So I basically just introverted into books. I was a,
Hmm.
and studies and that kind of thing.
Right.
And when we moved, my dad was had decided he wanted to leave the mission field. Went to Harvard to become a professor of Japanese art history, and his first teaching job was Florida Presbyterian College, became Eckerd College down in St. Petersburg. So when I
Oh, okay.
moved down to Florida, then I was like every other kid because everybody in Florida's moved down from the north, and it wasn't obvious that I was a missionary kid anymore. So that's kind of when I tried to sort of start pretending like I was everybody else.
What did it mean in your life to be a missionary kid?
Um, it basically has what it means for me, okay, is I'm the Japanese kid that you don't see.
Hmm. You
Because
mean
if I,
invisible, like
watashi
invisibility?
no namae wa Imaoka Mariko. I mean, people don't get it.
Hmm.
And I don't know things I don't know because
Hmm.
of the fact that I wasn't part of the US culture until 9 years old.
Hmm.
I don't get references that people have for movies, TVs, all kinds of things. It's just,
Did you
I don't
see
know.
the? I bet you did see the Beatles on Ed Sullivan. No, you missed that. Okay. To me, that's
My
the.
my father bought a Beatles record because he was quite a
Oh,
good musician and he recognized what was special about the Beatles. So in Japan, we heard the Beatles because of my dad buying the record.
that's so
But I
funny
can tell
because
you,
for
this is the degree to which I was not part of the United States. Okay, the day Kennedy was shot, everybody knows what happened, right? Well, it happened to be a festival night, and I was with all the neighborhood kids in our little yukatas dancing around. And dad came and said we had to leave because the president had been shot. So we have to leave. And I'm like, what's a president? I
yeah,
don't know why I have to leave.
you had no idea.
So I had no idea until I came to this country. And then obviously I got educated.
What when you were when you first came to America, you must have felt, I'm guessing, but very isolated and sort of otherness. But
Right.
you weren't a black person. You weren't a you didn't look Japanese. You were like you looked like everybody else, but
Exactly.
you just didn't have the common thread with everybody else.
Exactly.
Did that
Yeah.
change in high school? Did that get better?
Well, obviously, over the course of my life, I'm now,
Yeah.
acculturated and whatnot. But occasionally I will still do something like Clueless. Um, I am involved socially with this lesbian over 40 meetup group, and I'm one of the organizers. And so I get this food at Costco for the party and whatnot, and I order the cakes. So there was one time when I brought the cake, the other person organizer said, "Marian, do you know that's a wedding cake?"
There's a metaphor in there somewhere. I don't know where, but
I, I didn't know it was a wedding cake.
oh, jeez. Yeah,
I mean, after she said it, I kind of looked at it and said, "Oh yeah, I guess you're right." But like, yeah.
but just one other question on the missionary. Do you think being and you say fourth generation missionary with real pride, as you should, um, is that is there what of the missionary did you take forward? You
My
assimilated, you acculturated, but what of the missionary girl is still there?
well, my mother's father was a missionary doctor in Turkey,
Oh,
so my going into medicine definitely was related to, um, yeah, to my
to being a
grandmother.
missionary's kid,
Yeah,
and missionary, you mean it's Christian missionary, I assume, and what
Episcopal.
denomination was it?
Episcopal. My mom was congregational when they were in Turkey. My grandfather was the Episcopal Bishop of Anchang Province in Turkey. In China. I'm mispronouncing that, but in any case, uh,
Wow. Well,
and
that's a big
so
job. Yeah.
yeah, so he, you know, he was a big deal, and I mean, he was interred during the war by the Japanese and all that kind of stuff. But eventually got thrown out by Mao Zedong. Yeah.
So now I can understand why you were so happy to get out of a lousy high school and be surrounded by stuff you could learn. But you wanted
Right.
to keep your Japanese up. You wanted to, and I assume you still speak Japanese, right?
Yeah, my youngest brother still lives in Japan, and we have a cabin up in the mountains that my
Oh,
and mom built basically as soon as they arrived, and it was finished right when my oldest sister was born. So going back to the cabin is something that we do as a family on for big reunions, and yeah, I very much feel attached to Japan. I'm going to be bringing my uh, son Brad and his my grandkids to Japan next January, and I'm really excited about that.
that is exciting. So, so anyway, to get back to your brilliant medical career, you just kind of walk me through, and I'm interested in kind of the two because a lot of people know Charlie too. I'm interested in sort of the dynamic of because you were both. I can tell you, and I from reading your stuff that you're an ambitious person. I think, and I remember Charlie being that way, not in like a commercial sense, but just sort of he wanted to have an impact. That's what I remember about Charlie. I couldn't tell you how, but how did you navigate that? How did that play out?
So actually, a lot of the interests that I had also overlapped with Charlie's, but the way that he pursued it through education was specializing in dyslexia. And he worked at Landmark School and then went on to the Institute of Health Professions at Mass General. So he's become quite a notable professor in the field of dyslexia, international dyslexia specifically. So,
Uh-huh.
because of my Japan connection, that led him to his first international work because of, uh, in other words, looking at dyslexia in Japanese, looking at dyslexia in English and what that does. And he's
Yeah.
now gone on and with Arabic and dyslexia, looking at in Portuguese. I mean, he's worked internationally and become
Oh,
quite
so interesting. And
recognized for international
where's,
dyslexia
where,
work.
where is he a professor?
It at the Mass General Institute for Health Professions.
Oh,
So it's a
he's still,
yeah.
yeah.
He's now retired, so he's like considered emeritus, but he still
Oh, that's
does.
great. That's great. Give him my best if you talk to him. Is he coming to reunion?
He's well, parts of it, but if you come to my aftergo party, and I'll use this as the opportunity to plug that, it
Yeah,
came into
please.
the schedule pretty late, but I am throwing a party for everybody who comes to the reunion. So if you find people that you want to talk to, but you don't have the chance to keep talking, then both come to the party. Just RSVP me so I can make sure there's enough
And it's
good stuff.
Friday, the last
Friday at
after,
the
and
very end.
what time is it?
So it's called 4 o'clock as the start time, but if you're doing something else at 4 o'clock, just come when you're done, and so it's technically 4 to 7, but it'll be four to whenever people feel like leaving.
And your address?
159 Hancock Street, number 5.
In
So
Cambridge. Oh,
it's in Cambridge.
right.
Yeah, if you remember going down Mass Ave to the Plow and Stars, that's the Hancock Street.
Oh,
So
and
it's
that's
about
right. Okay.
yeah. So then
Forget the
but I
plowing. Yeah.
not handicap accessible. So that's the only drawback.
Okay. Okay, great. And I hope I'm going to miss that. So forgive me.
Okay.
But that
Well, you can,
I wish I could
right.
go. I'm sorry to miss that.
And I'll
So
put in my RSVP 617-240-6585 or MC Craighill at iCloud. Thank you.
Give that phone number again.
617-240-6585. Looking forward to seeing you
Yeah,
all.
yeah, good. I hope
We make
everybody
it.
can come. I hope everybody can come. Um, so just on the dyslexia, I that's so he got into that at a time when it was just becoming understood. It was still not a well understood thing. Most of the people we grew up with who had dyslexia were kind of shit out of luck. They
Right.
couldn't read. They struggled in school. They could have been super smart. Nobody knew it. Lots of famous cases of that now, like the lawyer David Boies was dyslexic, but so Charlie, it sounds, was at the frontier of that. So what were you doing as he was getting into that?
I was doing my internship and residency. So thank goodness that Charlie was able to be there at the home front, because we did have Eric, who was 6, and I certainly, doing my internship, at the Brigham and Women's, surgical call, 12 hours off, 36 hours on. I mean, I certainly wasn't around to raise kids. We had
And you
our,
obstetrics and gynecology, is that right?
yeah,
So
OBGYN.
you were kind of trying to balance that with having kids. Not an easy thing.
And I delivered my first on the very last day of my residency. That was Brad. So he was my firstborn, our second child. And then I had my third while I was in the process of building my private office, when I was building it out.
And have you
So,
stayed in the Boston area the whole time?
yep.
Okay, and so you went on at the in Boston. It was, I think, at the Children's Hospital, or you told me the
So when
exact
I,
hospital.
sure. So I did my residency at the Brigham and Women's. And
Yeah.
then when I finished it, I went into practice with one of my professors who was chief of gynecology at Children's Hospital. So I had
Mm.
an adult practice at the Brigham and my pediatric and adolescent practice at Children's. And then I initially was office sharing, and then eventually built out my own uh, private solo office for my adult practice and seeing the patient at Children's. Then, for medical politics reasons, I basically uh, gave up the position and was just practicing, but now doing both pediatric and adolescent in my private office.
And
And then,
there's a mention in your red book about, in one of the red books about, you ended up running the obstetrics and gynecology department for 8 years, but you kind of mentioned it was sort of in spite of this horrible misogynistic
yeah,
head of, head of department. So obviously, people of our generation, women of our generation, this is one of the horrible challenges faced, that maybe men had bad bosses too, but maybe didn't face it quite in the same way. So
yeah,
I'd love to hear more about how horrible he was, and how was he, and in what ways was that person horrible, and sort of,
okay,
you're at that age, you're sort of pioneering this. There aren't a ton of women. I mean, there are women doctors, but it's still a little bit new. And so what did he do, and how did you deal with it?
okay. Hardy Hendren had never once allowed a female to train under him, let alone be a division chief under him. So, as chief of surgery, he basically did not give me anything. And so I continued to build the practice. I then had myself, my nurse practitioner, my and let's see, what's that? All in, and my secretary in the same office space that
Hmm.
the pediatric surgeons had just for themselves and their office secretary. And
Oh.
because of the fact that we were taking care of adolescents and giving them birth control packs of pills, but we need to make sure that they had an up to date pap smear, and we never could depend on the uh, medical records department when kids swung by for their pack of pills. We had shadow charts on all our patients. So we had
Mm.
all of this office records, people, desks, everything crammed in a tiny space. I had increased my operative volume, my clinic volume by 600%. I had increased my operative volume by similar quantities. I could not get one single iota of anything. I had two fellows. Oh, that's right. My two fellows were in there as well. And they could get no assistance from the residents who were at the Brigham, who got no exposure to pediatric and adolescent gynecology because they weren't rotating over and assisting. All
Mm.
because of the fact that I did not have the right chromosomes. So
You
I
you
then
did not
took one of
what?
their
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You did not
chromosomes,
have
my
all because.
chromosome.
Oh, yeah, yeah. There's that. So no Y
Okay.
chromosome, no rotations in there. Okay.
So I then take a person who's in the fertility and endocrine residency, not fellowship at the Brigham. I train him in my field. I then turn the after a year of his training, I give him the position of being chief of gynecology, and I'm now just a member of the division. Within 6 months, he had all of the things that I had been needing and wanting. But
Mm.
I had the patients coming to me because the young girls didn't want to go see him,
Right. Right.
which meant
Well,
eventually that he had to destroy me because otherwise he couldn't move onward. So
did he
eventually
push
I,
you out? He pushed you out?
huh? Yeah,
Pushed you
he,
out?
he basically found a way to make the chief of OBGYN at the Brigham think that I was not okay, and therefore they
Mm.
did stuff that made me have to, step back. And once I wasn't operating, then it was like, oh, okay, well, I was in deadland, and I could not get back to clinical medicine.
You had no
I kept
recourse, you had no remedy.
every place that I tried. Eventually, they would be all ready to hire me, looking at my great CV, and then it would come up against the brick wall, and all of a sudden, I had no opportunities. And eventually, I kept borrowing money from my parents until they were about ready to go under, and so I finally switched fields. And since then, I've been doing administrative medicine and have a very successful second career.
So, what kind of medicine is that? Tell us about that. Your second
Sure.
career.
So I got hired by what was at that time called Optum. And basically, I've been working for United Healthcare as
Hmm.
a medical director. So
I see.
I've done different things, but right now they've specialized me in the what they call post acute care managed Medicare.
So
So
you would have
somebody's
you
in
would
the
have
hospital, they have Medicare, and they need to go someplace else, and then that's where I come in.
so it sounds like you would have preferred to stay where you were and not be
I
forced out.
wanted I loved clinical medicine, and it was
Yeah.
extremely difficult to be getting calls from patients saying, I want to see you. When can I see you? You were the best doctor I ever had. When can I see you?
Were you
Uh,
bitter about that?
hmm?
Were you
It was
bitter?
I had a very hard time. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I would think that you would be. I mean, I would think that that's like terrible that you sort of are on one track and in a very unfair way, you're knocked off it. That could really stink.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, and were you still married to Charlie at that point?
Um, Actually, the um, we were in the process of divorcing. That was also part of what was making my life difficult at the time.
Yeah. What year
Um,
was that roughly? What time are we talking about?
we're basically 98.
Okay. So
We,
so
Charlie and I started going apart in 95.
uh-huh.
And um, it was a very we were doing it all with therapy was all about what was best for the kids, and we have very successfully raised our children together.
That's great. Now I'm curious uh, to ask. Forget I'm the one who asks the embarrassing question or the the uncomfortable question. I'm really interested to know if when you were as an undergrad or at any point earlier in your life, did you have any inkling or did you think that you might be a lesbian or did that come later?
I was 100% clueless.
Okay.
And I would also point out Charlie, being a quite sensitive and astute person, figured it out way before I did. He
Oh
said to
wow.
me, Marian, maybe what's wrong with our marriage is you'd rather be with women.
Well, how did he know that? How did he know
How,
that?
for me, I'm like, be with women. I'm with women all the time. All my staff are women. Everybody in the OR with me is women. All my patients are women. How could how could it be I want to be with women? So the
He could have said the same thing and said, "Look, you're always with women." He could have used the same evidence, just make the opposite point. But
but
you were
I think that emotionally, okay, the fact that I was a gynecologist, the fact that I spent all my days looking at people's crotches, I had those professional boundaries up. I
yeah.
could not think in terms of that having
Sexuality.
anything to do with
Yeah.
me or whatever. Yeah,
But
yeah.
had you
So
had any? I mean, Charlie said something, but had you were clueless? Did at what point were you still married when you started to have feelings for women,
so
desire
we
for?
were so we were married, and I had the international meeting of my pediatric and adolescent society coming up in Singapore. So I wanted, and Charlie and I were both big scuba divers. We had a condo down in Bonaire where our equipment was. So I wanted to go down to Bonaire, fly back with the equipment before Singapore. Charlie thought we should send the equipment up because that would be like two vacations right back to back. So I really hadn't had a vacation in a long time. I wanted to go to Bonaire. So I invited my financial planner to go along, knowing that if she wanted to go, Charlie wouldn't mess her vacation up. So we went together to Bonaire and she brought me out.
See what?
She was the one who brought me out.
Let you out.
That was
Okay.
on our trip to Bonaire that I had my first relationship, and it was like, oh, this is what I've been missing. So I came back and I said to Charlie, we need to get into therapy. And so the first session, as we're going back
Pardon
to
me.
our car,
Did you tell Charlie what had happened?
I said we needed, yeah, I said we need to get into therapy. And so,
Figure this
we
out.
were so after our very first therapy session, in which, it was the first thing that she said was, what's important is how the women get along, because that's what's important for the kids. So I get back to, oh no, we haven't even got to that yet, because then I walk the very first session, we're going back to our cars, and that's when Charlie tells me he's been involved with another woman for 4 years.
Oh,
That's
okay.
what he figured
This is
out
getting
before I did.
this is getting a little
He
soapy.
Yep, it was soapy, all right. So that
Yeah.
that was what happened.
So, had at that point had you told him what had happened in Bonaire?
So no, that when I told him what happened in Bonaire, that's when he told me, "Oh yeah, I know that you've been lesbian. That's why he's been involved with Susan, and Susan and he are married, and Susan's kids are now the step brothers of my kids, and they've all been living together for a long time, and we're all
Oh,
now one big happy family."
this is a very modern marriage,
Yep. And
right?
I can tell you, I worked day and night getting Susan to come to accept me because that was what was going to be good for the kids. So
Sure,
yeah, it was
sure.
very hard.
No, that's great though. That's good for you, and good for you both for kind of working it out. But there was when you were that high school kid in Florida, or even that young Harvard freshman, um, you had
I
no
had no clue.
idea, no
No clue.
idea, huh?
I think the fact that I moved from Japan to the United States when I was 9.
Yeah,
So during the time when, if there was any possibility of my having any connection to my coming to my into my sexuality, it was completely overwhelmed by my trying to fit in, just trying to
yeah,
figure out what you do to fit in.
yeah.
Monkey see, monkey.
You had a bigger. There was a bigger issue at work. Did
Yeah,
you
exactly.
did you know did you know any or many lesbians at Harvard at Radcliffe? Did
Not
you know?
at Radcliffe, as in my when I got into medical. Once in medical school, I was very involved in women in medicine, and I had a very good friend that would. I was head of the women in medicine for the American Medical Student Association. She was head for of the LGBT group for the American Medical Student Association. So we were doing stuff together all the time. I was in San Francisco. It's not like there weren't, you know, gay and
Right,
lesbian people around. But
right.
again, it was, for me, it was all, Charlie was my man, and we were on our way to
Yeah,
having our family, and I had no clue.
yeah, yeah. Interesting. So how did that? Once you knew, and once you had made the change and changed your life, how did that change you?
How did it change me? Well, I think, um, how did it change me?
Maybe it didn't.
Well,
But
socializing, obviously, I've got a whole different group of people that I socialize with. I guess that would be the way it changes me. Yeah.
you know what's so funny? Well, interesting about that. Did you ever watch ER, the television show? So it's
I
about
know of
doctors.
it.
Yeah,
Right.
it's about doctors. But there was a doctor who had a cane, a woman who had a cane, and she worked the emergency room. But she went through a thing where she said, she was like, I think I'm lesbian, and she was trying to, date another woman. And at one point, she went out with all the woman's friends, right? And the conversation obviously was completely different than what she was used to, and she actually got very uncomfortable and left.
Hmm.
But did that dichotomy ever bother you, or did you just kind of immediately um, blend in and be part of that group?
Um, I would say that when when I was when I had said, okay, yeah, I'm coming out, I was then doing things like going to P Town and,
Mhm.
doing
Mhm.
the tea dances and doing other kinds of things that would be socializing in a way that I hadn't at all before.
But
Yeah.
you had fun, it sounds like.
Yeah.
But you were having a good time. You enjoyed it.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
It was really like a second adolescence in terms of like just
Huh.
discovering things all anew. Yeah.
Did you miss anything about your previous life in terms of friends, socializing, way lifestyle?
I didn't lose any friends when I came out just because they were straight. So it wasn't
Mhm.
like there was less of anything.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I think that certainly the when Charlie and I were first breaking up, I stopped attending the church where we had both been going up
Was it
in Boston,
Episcopal Church?
Episcopal Church, and
Yeah.
tried to join the Episcopal Church in Boston that was most associated with the gay community, and it wasn't successful for reasons that have nothing to do with anything except that it was high church and I couldn't stand the smells and bells because I've always been low church Episcopalian. So I have basically went back to my church up in Topsfield. So have continued to sing in the choir, and I'm
For a singer,
active,
yeah,
very active in the choir. Very
and
active in.
was it, last question on this? Was it hard to make this transition as a missionary's daughter? I don't know the Episcopals well enough to know. Like, if for a Catholic, this would have been a really big deal, but maybe not for Episcopalians.
It was hard on my mom. She really loved Charlie a lot, and she thought that my not being with Charlie was not good. But in
Yeah,
fact, Charlie continued to have a very good relationship with my parents all the way till they passed, and
yeah,
so but yeah, I think that she would have liked to see me continue to be, married and not divorced. But
yeah. Of course, yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Well, hey, that's the way it goes sometimes. Um, so tell us about your singing.
well, first started singing when we first came from Japan, and I was singing in a kids choir, and then none between then and when, because of a pregnancy that Charlie and I lost. It was very, very difficult, and I needed solace and went to Trinity Episcopal Church, where the rector was wonderful, took us in, and the next fall, Charlie and I started singing because Charlie's also an excellent musician, and continued all the way through. With our divorce, we had communion at the rail with our kids every Sunday, so we, be able to use that as a time that we uh,
And you kept singing together. You kept, you
and
kept.
he stopped singing because of an ear issue, but I've continued, and I take lessons from my choral director, who's a opera star, and she got me singing very, very well. And then were able to expand the choir with a hired soprano, so didn't need me as soprano anymore, and now I'm singing as an alto because
No,
this is all part of what I consider my dementia prevention. Working on new things is
I
dementia
thought you were going to
prevention.
say God's plan, but it could be both.
And so when I sing the same hymns I know, but I have to sing a different line, it's something that's making my brain work. And
Yeah,
so
good for you. So that brings me. I'm told we're all getting older, and we're gonna have to make adjustments. Are you going to keep working? Do you see an end point to your career?
well, I know exactly what I'm going to be doing, and that is in October 4th. I'm stopping what I'm doing now, and
Mhm.
I am going scuba diving around the world. And
Oh
I've got it
wow!
all planned out. I
Where are you going?
stop at I start in the Red Sea, then I go to the Maldives, and then I'm going from the sea from the Maldives is to can't even remember it.
That
Uh,
is, you got to hold that up. You got to hold that up. That is so great. A
yeah,
globe. If you're just listening, this is a classic
oh
globe,
yes,
but you have
and then
little
I
marks
go,
on
yeah, all the places I'm going.
all
Okay,
over the world. Wow, that's incredible. Really,
so
truly.
yep. So after Maldives, I go to Bali for 4 days, and then to
Yeah.
Wakatobi, and then to Raja Ampat. At that point, it will be season. So I go to see my family in Sao Paulo for a couple of weeks, and then we all go together to have Christmas up in Boxford, and then we go to Japan, where the kids get a chance to see the snow monkeys and learn how to ski in 10 feet of snow when these kids grew up in the tropics. They go back home. I have a good time in Japan, chilling out and enjoying all the Zen temples in Kyoto that I love to spend so much time with, and the crowds won't be there, and it won't be hot, and I can just really mellow out. Then I go to Thailand, the two islands here, for a week. Then I go to Palau. Oh no, the Philippines for a land-based, one on one side, one on the other side of an island. Then liverboard in Palau. Then to the Great Barrier Reef for a liverboard. Then to Fiji for a liverboard. Then I'm doing Fiji on land until I enjoy the culture. And then I'm seeing my cousins in Hawaii and my sister in Seattle and my brother in the Bay Area. And then I'm coming home. And at that point, I will have quit my job in order to be gone that long. But my job will be available to go back to if I feel like it.
If you feel like it. And how long will that trip take?
From October till probably July.
October to July. Wow, that is by far the best bucket list I've heard of.
Yeah.
And do you still have
I've
the place?
I've wanted to go to these places all my life, but it takes so long to get there. And I
Yeah,
have to allow enough time for my clock to adjust. I can't adjust my time clock very quickly. So
yeah,
I
yeah.
always, that means that basically, I mean, getting to Japan is as best as I've been able to do all this time, but I've never been able to do any diving except for that one trip to Sipadan. So now I'm getting all my bucket lists checked off.
That's truly incredible. And is that a solo trip?
Well, there are parts of it. The Red Sea and the Philippines are both with a group of lesbian divers I've been diving with for
Oh,
more than a decade and a half. So they're people I know. Then the rest of it is basically they're all organized. They're all with, you know, uh, dive boats and
yeah.
masters and all that kind of stuff. But I'm going, I spent a long time looking for a person to dive around with the world with. And I finally decided when this Red Sea trip came up and I could only get time off enough to do the land based and the river and the liverboard, but I couldn't get a week off to see the Nile and the pyramids. And I'm like,
Uh,
what am I doing? I'm going to be all the way in there and I'm
yeah,
not going to see the pyramids. And
yeah.
I'm 70 years old. So really, what's wrong with this picture? And that's basically when I decided, okay, let my boss have notice.
So Marion, do you think I asked this question about a couple times in this conversation about, were you a different person? Do you think you'll be a different person when you come back from that journey?
Diving? Hmm. Well,
If the same person would go back to the same job, of course, right? So the
I
different
guess I'll
person.
know when I come back if I'm ready to go back to the same job or not.
That's great. Well, listen, this has been fantastic. What an interesting life. And I must say, the way that you've navigated situations is really impressive. There's a lot of complexity in what you're describing with Charlie, with your kids, with everything. And really pretty inspirational. And I've really got to thank you for being willing to share, some pretty personal stuff there. So always appreciate that. So thank you. And I won't get to your party, but tell us one more time, give us the details for your
Right.
party on the Friday of reunion week.
When the reunion ends, when all of the formal uh, things are finished, then please walk. It takes about 15 minutes. Or if you want to take a lift, it'll take, a very inexpensive one. 159 Hancock Street, number 5. That's going to be on the third floor of a Victorian, so lots of stairs. But delighted to have you come. If there's something specific that you want to eat or you have specific dietary restrictions, then you're welcome to bring something. But otherwise, refreshments and snacks will be provided.
And your phone number again, just so people have
Six,
it.
right, 617-240-6585.
Okay. Well, listen,
See you.
thanks a million for doing this. I'll see you at reunion. I got to make one comment before we go. You still have great hair, but you used to have unbelievable hair. That's what I remember about. Didn't you have like really thick, long, like you
Yeah,
really
yeah.
had hair?
I was
Uh,
hippie hair. I was definitely hippie hair. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's really funny. I used to
And
have.
for those who want to know, I put on shoes when my second year of medical school when I started having to do visits to clinic patients.
I forgot that part, but that is definitely good to know. Marian, thanks so much for doing this, and I'll see you at reunion. Don't hang up right away, but I'll see you at reunion. Okay. All
Will
right.
do.
Thanks.